On the night of my 71st birthday, my son-in-law scraped the leftovers from 20 guests' plates onto a paper towel, dropped it in front of me at the dinner table, and said, "Beggars eat last, old-timer." My daughter laughed so hard she spilled her wine. That was a Thursday. By Monday morning, I had a lawyer, a locksmith, and a police report. This is the story of how I lost a daughter and found myself again. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are right now. I need to go back a little. My name is Harold Pemberton. I was a civil engineer for the city of Edmonton for 38 years. Roads, bridges, drainage systems. I built things that lasted. My wife Linda used to joke that I was the most boring man in Alberta, and she meant it as a compliment. Steady, she called me. Dependable. The kind of man who checks the furnace filter on the first of every month and keeps receipts in alphabetical order. Linda died 6 years ago. ALS. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. The doctors gave her 18 months. She lasted 14. I watched the woman who used to hike the Icefields Parkway with me lose the ability to hold a fork, then speak, then breathe. Our daughter Stephanie was 28 when her mother died. She flew in from Toronto, stayed for the funeral, helped me sort through Linda's closet, and went back east. For 3 years after that, I lived alone in our house on Whitemud Drive. The house Linda and I bought in 1986. 4 bedrooms, finished basement, backyard that backed onto the ravine. I kept it immaculate because that is what Linda would have expected, and because keeping busy was the only thing standing between me and the kind of silence that swallows you whole. Then Stephanie called. It was a Tuesday in March, 3 years ago. She was crying. Darren lost his job. Darren was her husband, a man I had never fully warmed to but tolerated because my daughter loved him. He worked in marketing for some tech company that made apps nobody needed. They had been living in a condo in the annex neighborhood of Toronto, paying rent that made my eyes water. $3,200 a month for a 1-bedroom with no parking. Dad, we have nothing saved. We need to come home. Just for a few months. Just until Darren gets back on his feet. What was I supposed to say? She was my only child. Linda's daughter. The girl I had taught to ride a bike on Saskatchewan Drive, the girl whose science fair projects I had helped build every year from grade 4 to grade 12. The girl who cried when Linda's diagnosis came and promised me, standing right there in the hospital corridor, that she would never let me be alone. Of course you can come home, sweetheart. Stay as long as you need. That was 3 years ago. A few months, she said. 36 months and counting. They arrived with a U-Haul and 14 boxes. Darren shook my hand and called me sir, which I appreciated. Stephanie hugged me so hard I thought she might crack a rib. For the first 2 weeks, things were fine. Darren helped me fix the fence gate. Stephanie cooked dinner every night. They were polite, grateful, present. I thought, maybe this is what I needed. Maybe this house was too quiet, and now it would feel like a home again. The shift happened gradually. Week 3, Darren stopped helping with the yard. Week 5, Stephanie stopped cooking. By month 2, they had rearranged the living room without asking, moved Linda's reading chair into the basement, and replaced it with a leather sectional they ordered on my credit card. I found the charge on my statement. $2,400. When I mentioned it to Stephanie, she looked at me like I had accused her of something criminal. Dad, we needed somewhere to sit. That old chair was falling apart. That old chair was where your mother read every evening for 22 years. She rolled her eyes. You can't live in a museum, Dad. I let it go. That was my first mistake. I would make many more. I should explain why I let it go, because I know people will ask. I know they will say, why did you allow this? Why did you not set boundaries from the start? And the honest answer is guilt. After Linda died, I felt like I had failed Stephanie somehow. Like I had not been enough of a parent on my own. Like the fact that she ended up 31 years old with no savings and a husband who could not hold a job was somehow my fault for being too focused on my grief to guide her into adulthood. I know now that this was irrational. Stephanie was a grown woman who made her own choices. But guilt does not respond to logic. It responds to the voice of your dead wife in your memory saying, "Take care of our girl, Harold. Promise me." I promised. And I kept promising, long past the point where keeping that promise meant betraying myself. Over 3 years, I documented everything. It is the engineer in me. I cannot help it. I kept spreadsheets the way other people keep diaries. Every expense, every charge, every bill. Here is what those spreadsheets showed when I finally added it all up. Property tax, insurance, and maintenance on a house I owned outright, paid entirely by me, $41,000. Utilities, gas, electricity, water, internet, phone, $18,600. Groceries and household supplies, $22,000. Their personal charges to my credit cards, clothing, electronics, restaurants, salon visits, a gym membership for Darren at a place that charged $140 a month, $31,400. Unauthorized purchases on my Amazon account, $4,200. Total over 36 months, $117,200. Their financial contribution, $0. Not $1. Not once. Darren got a job at a marketing firm after 8 months, then quit after 6 weeks because his manager did not appreciate his creativity. Stephanie picked up a part-time gig at a yoga studio, then stopped going because the commute was 20 minutes. 20 minutes. In Edmonton, that is basically next door. I want to be clear about something. I am not a wealthy man. I have my city pension, my RRSP, a modest investment portfolio that Linda and I had built over decades. Comfortable, not rich. But $117,000 over 3 years put a dent in my retirement that I could feel. I started buying the discount bread at Superstore. I stopped renewing my subscription to Engineering Dimensions. I canceled the trip I had planned to visit Linda's grave in Jasper, where we had scattered her ashes, because I could not justify the gas money. Meanwhile, Darren bought a 65-inch television for the basement. On my visa. Let me tell you about my birthday. Stephanie had said she was planning something. A dinner, nothing fancy. Close friends, maybe a few neighbors. I spent the morning preparing. I made Linda's pot roast recipe, the one she perfected over 20 years, slow-cooked with root vegetables and rosemary from the garden. I made her Yorkshire pudding. I set the table with the good dishes, the ones from our wedding registry, 1983. I even ironed the linen tablecloth Linda had bought on our trip to Nova Scotia. By 5 in the afternoon, the food was ready. The house smelled like Sunday in 1995. I went upstairs to change into a clean shirt. Took a shower, combed my hair, put on the cufflinks Linda gave me for our 25th anniversary. When I came downstairs at 6:30, the dining room was full. 20 people. Some I recognized. My neighbor Doris and her husband. A couple from my old engineering team. But most were strangers to me. Darren's friends, Stephanie's yoga crowd, people who looked like they had walked off a lifestyle Instagram page. They were already eating. My pot roast was half gone. The Yorkshire pudding demolished. Wine bottles open on the counter, bottles I did not buy, probably charged to my card. Nobody had called me down. Nobody had waited. I stood in the doorway for a full 10 seconds before anyone noticed. Dora saw me first. She put her fork down and said, quietly, "Harold, happy birthday. Come sit down." But there was nowhere to sit. Every chair was taken. My chair at the head of the table, the one I had sat in for 38 years, was occupied by Darren. He had his elbows on the table, telling some story about a camping trip, making everyone laugh. Stephanie saw me and waved. "Dad, you are up. We started without you, sorry, the food was getting cold." The food I cooked. Getting cold. In my house. At my birthday dinner. That I was not invited to start. I stood there. I did not know what to do. I am not a man who makes scenes. I have never raised my voice in public. Linda used to say I had the emotional range of a thermostat, steady and reliable and never too hot or too cold. But something was building inside me that night. A pressure behind my sternum, like steam in a pipe with no release valve. Darren looked up. He had that grin. The one I had grown to recognize over 3 years. The one that said, I know exactly what I am doing, and I know you will not stop me. He stood up. Hold on, everyone. Before we go any further, I have a special birthday treat for the guest of honor. He walked into the kitchen. I heard plates clinking, silverware scraping. He came back carrying a paper plate. On it was a pile of food scraps. Bones with bits of meat clinging to them. Potato skins. Wilted salad leaves. The remnants from other people's plates, gathered into a heap. He set it down on the edge of the table closest to where I was standing. Here you go, Pops. Beggars eat last, right? You have been mooching off us long enough. Time you learned what freeloaders get. Stephanie laughed. She covered her mouth, but she laughed. A few of Darren's friends snickered. Most of the room went silent. Doris stood up. Her chair scraped against the hardwood. Her husband put his hand on her arm, but she shook it off. That is enough, she said. Her voice was firm, the way a retired school principal speaks, which is exactly what she was. Harold built this house. Harold cooked this food. You should be ashamed of yourself. Darren waved her off. Relax, Doris. It is a joke. The old man knows it is a joke. Right, Pops? I looked at the paper plate. At the bones and the scraps. At the food I had cooked being handed back to me as garbage. I looked at my daughter, still smiling, her hand on Darren's arm. I looked at the wedding dishes on the table, Linda's dishes, being used by strangers who had not even waited for me. Something did not break inside me. It finished building. Like a bridge reaching the other shore. Complete. Solid. Done. I picked up the paper plate. Not fast, not angry. I picked it up the way you pick up anything. I walked to the kitchen, opened the garbage can, and dropped it in. Then I washed my hands. Dried them on the towel hanging from the oven door, the one with the maple leaf pattern Linda had bought at the St. Albert Farmers Market 12 years ago. I walked back through the dining room without looking at anyone. Up the stairs. Into my bedroom. I closed the door and turned the lock. Below me, Darren's voice. Come on, everybody, relax. He is fine. He is always dramatic. Who wants more wine? I sat at my desk. Linda's photo watched me from the shelf above a monitor. Her hiking photo, the one from Maligney Canyon, wind in her hair, laughing at something I had said. I looked at that photo for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and got to work. I did not sleep that night. The party wound down around midnight. Cars leaving, voices fading, doors closing. By 2 a.m, the house was silent. I sat at my desk with 3 years of bank statements, credit card bills, utility records, and tax documents spread across the surface. My engineer's brain was fully engaged now. No emotion. Just data. I built a spreadsheet. Columns for date, category, amount, authorized user, notes. Every charge Stephanie or Darren had made on my accounts, documented and cross-referenced with my bank records. Every bill I had paid on their behalf. Every grocery receipt. I keep all my receipts. Linda used to tease me about it. Now I was grateful for every crumpled slip of paper in that filing cabinet. By 6 a.m, the spreadsheet was complete. $117,200. I saved the file. Printed 2 copies. Put one in my briefcase and one in the filing cabinet, locked. At 7:15, I called my bank. TD was open early. I had been a customer since 1984. Good morning, this is Harold Pemberton. I need to remove 2 authorized users from my credit card and debit card accounts effective immediately. The representative was professional, efficient. Within 30 minutes, Stephanie and Darren were cut off from every account I owned. I changed my online banking password. I set up fraud alerts on every card. I changed my PIN numbers. By 8 o'clock, the financial umbilical cord was severed. I packed a bag. Enough clothes for a week. My laptop, my documents, my toothbrush. Linda's photo from the shelf. I put it all in the suitcase we had used for our trip to Newfoundland in 2012, the last real vacation before the diagnosis. I left a note on the kitchen counter. Visiting a friend in Sherwood Park. Back in a few days. I did not have a friend in Sherwood Park. I barely had friends anywhere anymore. 3 years of living under the thumb of people who treated me like furniture had reduced my social world to Doris next door and occasional emails from my former colleague Hugh Kendall, now retired in Kelowna. I drove to a Best Western near the airport. Paid cash for a week. The room smelled like industrial cleaner and carpet shampoo. I sat on the bed and stared at the wall for 20 minutes. Not crying. Just sitting with the weight of what I was about to do. Then I opened my laptop and searched for lawyers in Edmonton specializing in elder abuse and property law. Christine Okafor had a small firm on Jasper Avenue. Her website said she had 15 years of experience in elder financial abuse cases. She responded to my email within the hour. Available tomorrow at 10. Please bring all documentation. I spent the rest of the day at the motel, not answering my phone. The call started around noon. Stephanie first. Dad, where are you? Then Darren, sounding annoyed. Harold, the card got declined at Costco. What is going on? Then Stephanie again, voice higher, more urgent. Dad, please call back. Something is wrong with the bank accounts. I listened to each voicemail once, then deleted it. The next morning, I drove to Christine Okafor's office. She was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, sharp eyes behind round glasses, a no-nonsense handshake. Her office was lined with law books and framed degrees. University of Alberta. Called to the bar in 2009. I laid everything out. The spreadsheet. The bank statements. The timeline. I told her about the birthday, about the scraps, about Beggars Eat Last. I told her calmly. I was done being emotional about it. This was an engineering problem now, and I needed a solution. Christine listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. Mr. Pemberton, you have a straightforward revocation of license case. They have no lease, no tenancy agreement, no legal right to occupy your property beyond your goodwill. Under Alberta law, you can revoke that permission with written notice. I recommend 14 days. More than required, but it demonstrates good faith. How do we deliver it? Registered mail and process server. Belt and suspenders. They cannot claim they never received it. She paused, then looked at me directly. I also want you to consider something. The unauthorized credit card charges. $31,400 in personal purchases you did not approve. That is not just a family dispute. That is fraud. Criminal Code Section 380. Have you considered a police report? I had not. Not yet. But I told her to draft the eviction notice first. One step at a time. She charged me $500 for the consultation and the drafting. I wrote the check from my personal account, the one they never had access to. $500, less than what Darren spent on his gym membership in 4 months. The notice went out Monday morning. Process server delivered a copy Tuesday afternoon. I know because Christine texted me. Served at 2:14 p.m. Your daughter answered the door. I stayed at the motel until Wednesday. Let them marinate. Let the reality sink in. My phone showed 32 missed calls by then. Stephanie, Darren, Stephanie's friend from yoga, Darren's brother in Saskatoon. The campaign of sympathy had begun. Darren's brother, a man named Ricky whom I had met exactly twice, called at 9 on Wednesday morning. I picked up. Harold, Darren told me what is happening. I just think this is a big overreaction. Families work things out. You do not get lawyers involved. Ricky, your brother served me table scraps on a paper plate at my own birthday dinner in my own house and called me a beggar in front of 20 people. Then he charged $65,000 of personal expenses to my credit cards over 3 years without my permission. Does that sound like a family misunderstanding to you? Silence. Then, he did not mention the birthday thing. I am sure he did not. Goodbye, Ricky. I checked out of the motel Wednesday afternoon and drove home. Pulled into my driveway at 3. The house looked the same from outside. Same blue siding I had repainted in 2018. Same spruce tree Linda and I planted when Stephanie was born. It was 34 years old now, taller than the house. I unlocked the front door. Footsteps immediately. Stephanie appeared from the kitchen, face blotchy, eyes red. Dad. Thank God. We have been losing our minds. What is this? She held up the notice. Her hand was shaking. It is a legal notice requiring you and Darren to vacate this property within 14 days. Darren came down the stairs. His face was different from what I expected. Not angry. Scared. He had the look of a man who had just realized the safety net was gone. Harold, come on. We can talk about this. Whatever we did, we are sorry. Just tell us what you want and we will do it. I set my briefcase on the kitchen counter. I want you out of my house in 14 days. That is what I want. This is insane, Stephanie said. Her voice cracked. You are my father. You cannot just throw me out onto the street. I looked at her. My daughter. Linda's eyes, Linda's chin, the sprinkle of freckles across her nose that she inherited from her mother. The girl I drove to swimming lessons every Saturday morning for 9 years. The girl whose university tuition I paid without being asked to. The girl who promised me in a hospital corridor that I would never be alone. Stephanie, on Thursday night, in this house, at this table, your husband handed me a plate of garbage and called me a beggar. You laughed. You did not correct him, you did not apologize, you laughed. And then you went back to eating the food I cooked, in the house I built, surrounded by your friends who had not even bothered to wait for me to come downstairs. I was not trying to be cruel. I was trying to be accurate. There is a difference. That was a joke. Darren's voice from behind her, smaller now. A stupid joke. I was drinking. I did not mean it. You meant it, Darren. I have watched you for 3 years. The comments about my cooking, the eye rolls when I ask about bills, the way you moved my wife's chair to the basement like she was furniture to be discarded. You meant every bit of it. The plate of scraps was just the first time you were honest about it. He had no answer. People rarely do when you describe their behavior back to them without editorializing. The 14 days that followed were the longest of my life. They tried everything. Stephanie cried, then raged, then cried again. Darren threatened to call a lawyer, which I welcomed. He threatened to call the media, which I doubted he would. Stephanie called my sister-in-law in Victoria, Linda's sister, who phoned me that Friday evening. Harold, Stephanie says you were evicting her. What on earth happened? I told her. The full story. The 3 years, the money, the birthday, the scraps. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Linda would have thrown them out after 6 months, she said finally. I know. I should have listened to the version of Linda that lives in my head. She has been telling me the same thing for 2 years. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my bedroom and thought about that. About how I had been so afraid of losing my last connection to Linda, through our daughter, that I had allowed myself to be destroyed by it. The irony was suffocating. I had kept Stephanie close to honor Linda's memory, and in doing so, I had let them move Linda's chair to the basement, eat through my savings, and turn our home into their personal resort. On day 9, I discovered something that changed the entire situation. I was reviewing my property records for Christine, pulling together the title deed and insurance paperwork, when I noticed a document I did not recognize. A home equity line of credit application, dated 14 months ago. My house. My name. Not my signature. Someone had applied for a $75,000 HELOC against my property. The application was in my name, using my social insurance number, my date of birth, my employment history. But the signature was wrong. I have signed my name the same way for 50 years. This signature was close, but the P in Pemberton was off. The loop was too wide. An engineer notices geometry. I called the lender. Scotiabank. It took an hour and 3 transfers to reach someone who could tell me what I needed to know. Yes, Mr. Pemberton. The HELOC was approved 14 months ago. Current balance drawn is $42,600. The disbursements went to a checking account ending in 7814. That was not my checking account. I called Christine immediately. Christine, they forged my signature on a home equity line of credit. $75,000 approved. $42,600 drawn. Against my house. My house that I own free and clear. Her voice went flat. Professional flat. The kind of flat that means someone has shifted from civil attorney to war footing. Harold, that is identity theft, forgery, and fraud. Criminal Code sections 366, 367, and 380. We are no longer talking about an eviction. We are talking about prison time. I filed the police report that afternoon. A constable came to the house while Stephanie and Darren were out looking at apartments. Were pretending to look at apartments. The officer was a woman in her 50s, calm and thorough. She took my statement, photographed the documents, asked detailed questions about who had access to my personal information. As she was leaving, she stopped at the door. Mr. Pemberton, I work elder abuse cases regularly. This is more common than people realize. Adult children, usually with a spouse who drives the behavior, exploiting a parent financially. Most victims never report it because they feel ashamed. You should not feel ashamed. You did the right thing. Elder abuse. I was 71 years old and my own daughter had committed elder abuse against me. That phrase sat in my chest like a stone. That evening, I updated my spreadsheet. Original support over 36 months, $117,200. Unauthorized personal charges, $31,400. Fraudulent HELOC withdrawals, $42,600. Grand total, $191,200. Nearly $200,000. Stolen from a retired civil servant living on a pension, by his own daughter and her husband, in his own house. I sent them an email that night. Subject line, criminal fraud investigation. Body, you forged my signature on a home equity line of credit and withdrew $42,600 without my knowledge or consent. I have filed a police report. The fraud investigation is underway. This amount will be added to any civil claim for restitution. You should each retain a criminal defense attorney. You have 5 days remaining on your eviction notice. I copied Christine. 3 minutes after I pressed send, I heard Darren's voice from downstairs, muffled through the floor. What the hell? He knows. He knows about the line of credit. Stephanie's voice, high and panicked. You said he would never find out. You said he never checks his property records. I check everything. I have always checked everything. I am an engineer. We verify. The next morning, they were gone. A note on the counter. Staying with Ricky in Saskatoon. Back to get our things before the deadline. 5 days early. They ran. I walked through the empty house slowly. Their mess was everywhere. Dishes in the sink, laundry on the bathroom floor, a half-eaten pizza on the coffee table. The leather sectional sat where Linda's reading chair used to be. I went down to the basement. Linda's chair was there, pushed into the corner behind Darren's weight bench. I carried it upstairs by myself. It was heavy, old upholstery, solid wood frame. I put it back in its spot by the window, where the afternoon light came through. I sat in it for the first time in 3 years. It smelled like dust and storage. But underneath that, if I breathed deeply enough, I could still catch the faintest trace of the lavender hand cream Linda used to wear. I sat there for a long time. The next 3 days, I documented everything. Photographed every room. Cataloged their possessions. Installed 2 security cameras, one in the living room, one in the kitchen. Legal in Alberta with written notification, which I provided via email to Stephanie's address. On eviction day, they arrived at 9 in the morning. A rental truck. Darren driving, Stephanie in the passenger seat, Ricky, and a friend I did not recognize following in a pickup. I opened the front door before they reached it. You have until 5 o'clock. I will be here the entire time documenting. Do not damage anything. Darren walked past me without a word. Stephanie would not meet my eyes. For 7 hours, I watched them carry out boxes, garbage bags full of clothes, the television, the weight bench, a collection of kitchen gadgets they had bought with my money. I photographed everything. Timestamped. Filed. At 2 in the afternoon, Stephanie found me in the kitchen. She had been crying. Real tears, I think. Or at least the closest to real I had seen from her in years. Dad, please. Can we just talk for 1 minute? I am listening. I am sorry. Truly sorry. Not because of the consequences. Because I see now what we did to you. I see what I let happen. I should have stopped it. I should have stopped him. I should have been the person Mom raised me to be. I looked at her for a long time. My daughter. The girl who used to sit on my lap while I read her bedtime stories. The woman who let her husband feed me scraps and call me a beggar. Stephanie, do you know what hurts the most? It is not the money. I can recover from the money. It is that you watched it happen and chose him over me. Every time. Every single time. You chose his cruelty over my dignity. And you convinced yourself it was a joke. She started to speak, but I was not finished. Your mother made me promise to take care of you. I kept that promise past the point of my own destruction. But here is what I finally understand. Taking care of you does not mean letting you destroy me. Linda would have told you that herself. She would have thrown you out 2 years ago, and you know it, because you knew your mother, and you know I am right. Stephanie wiped her eyes. Did not argue. She knew. The deadline is 5 o'clock, I said. I suggest you keep loading. At 4:51, the truck was full. They stood in the driveway. Darren would not look at me. Ricky hovered near the pickup, uncomfortable. Stephanie turned at the last moment. What happens now? With the police? With the money? Your attorney will hear from mine. Will you ever forgive me? I do not know yet, I said. I will need time to figure out what forgiveness looks like when there is nothing left to rebuild. She nodded. Got in the truck. They pulled away. I watched the rental truck turn left onto White Mud Drive and disappear behind the spruce trees. Then I went inside, locked the door with the new deadbolt I had installed 3 days earlier, and sat down in Linda's chair. 2 weeks later, Christine Okafor called with the options I had prepared. Harold, you have 3 paths. First, criminal charges. Identity theft, forgery, fraud. If convicted, Darren is looking at up to 10 years. Stephanie as an accomplice, possibly less, but still significant. Second, a restitution agreement. They sign a formal repayment plan for the full amount, $191,200, payable monthly with missed payments triggering criminal prosecution. Third, bankruptcy. They declare insolvency, you recover little or nothing, but they live with destroyed credit for 7 years. I thought about it for 1 week. I consulted Hugh Kendall, who drove in from Kelowna to sit with me in the living room and drink coffee and tell me what he thought. I consulted Linda's sister in Victoria, who said, do what Linda would do, which was practical advice because Linda was the most pragmatic person I ever knew. I consulted Doris from next door, who brought over a casserole and said, whatever you decide, Harold, you have already won, because you are sitting in your own house in your own chair and they are sleeping on a pull-out couch in Saskatoon. I chose restitution. $900 a month for 17 years and 9 months. Darren got a job at a call center. Stephanie started working at a retail pharmacy. Between them, they earned enough to manage the payments if they lived carefully. If they missed a single payment, the criminal charges would be filed immediately. Christine formalized the agreement. Signed by all parties. Notarized. Ironclad. The first payment arrived on the 15th of the following month. $900 e-transfer from Stephanie's bank account to mine. I did not spend it. I opened a separate savings account at a credit union and deposited it there. I had an idea about what to do with it, but it needed time to take shape. That same week, I did something I had not done in 3 years. I invited people over. Doris and her husband. Hugh Kendall and his wife, who had stayed an extra day. Christine Okafor, who turned out to be excellent company when she was not drafting eviction notices. Linda's sister, who flew in from Victoria. I cooked Linda's pot roast. The real recipe, with the rosemary and the root vegetables and the Yorkshire pudding. I set the table with the wedding dishes. I sat at the head of the table, in my chair, and I ate first. Nobody served me scraps. Nobody called me a beggar. Nobody laughed. Hugh raised his glass. To Harold. To knowing what you were worth. We clinked glasses, and for a moment I could feel Linda in the room, in the warmth of the food, in the laughter of people who actually cared whether I was at the table. After everyone left, I sat on the back deck despite the cold. November in Edmonton, -8 and dropping. I wore Linda's old quilted jacket, the one she used to put on for morning coffee on the deck in summer. The stars were sharp above the ravine. No city light pollution back there, just pines and sky and silence. I had lost a daughter. Maybe not permanently, maybe not forever, but for now, she was gone. And the truth is, I had lost her long before the birthday. I lost her the day I stopped expecting her to be a decent human being, the day I decided that keeping her close was more important than keeping my dignity. I do not hate Stephanie. I do not hate Darren, although I came close. What I feel is something quieter and harder to name. Disappointment, maybe. The particular disappointment of realizing that the person you raised does not share your values, and that no amount of sacrifice will teach them what example could not. The next month, I went to the Edmonton Seniors Center on Stony Plain Road. I asked if they had a support group for people dealing with family financial abuse. They did not, but they had a bulletin board. I wrote a 1-page summary of my experience, 10 lessons I had learned, printed 50 copies, and pinned one to the board. The rest I left in a stack on the table by the coffee machine. Within a week, 4 people called me. 4. All seniors, all dealing with some version of my story. Adult children who had moved in and never left. Grandchildren who had drained bank accounts. Spouses of deceased partners who had been pressured into handing over control of their finances. All of them thought they were alone. None of them were. I started meeting with them informally. Coffee at Tim Hortons on Saturday mornings. We did not have a name for it. We just called it Saturday Coffee. Hugh said I should call it the Harold Pemberton School for Seniors Who Will Not Take It Anymore, but I thought that was a bit much. 6 months after the eviction, Stephanie called. I almost did not answer. But I did. Dad. I just wanted you to know. I left Darren. I filed for separation last week. I am living with a coworker. I have my own bank account for the first time in 10 years. I am making the payments. I will not miss a single one. And I am in therapy. I am working on understanding why I let it happen. Why I let him treat you that way. Why I chose him. I listened. I did not interrupt. When she finished, I said the only thing I could. I am glad you were getting help, Stephanie. That was all I could give her. Not forgiveness, not yet. Not an invitation to come home. But acknowledgement. A door left slightly ajar instead of locked shut. After we hung up, I sat in Linda's chair and looked at her hiking photo on the shelf. Malignant Canyon. Wind in her hair. Linda, I think she might be finding her way. No answer, of course. But the house felt warm that evening, warmer than the thermostat setting, and I chose to believe that meant something. My name is Harold Pemberton. I am 71 years old. I live in Edmonton, Alberta, in a house I built, in a chair my wife loved, surrounded by silence I have earned. The payments come every month. The Saturday coffee group is growing. Doris brings pie sometimes. The spruce tree Stephanie and I planted the year she was born is taller than the roof now. Its roots go deep, and so do mine. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to Lullaby Revenge, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family? How did you handle it? Your story might help someone else who is going through this right now. Click the video on the left to hear another true story of justice served. Thank you for listening.